She had every right to be bitter. Life dealt her a lot of harsh things along the way. Though talented, she went unrecognized for years. Prestigious opera circles closed their ranks when she tried to enter. Critics ignored her compelling voice. She was often rejected for parts that she was easily qualified for. It was only after she went to Europe and won the hearts of tough-to-please European audiences that her reputation here in the United States began to rise. Not only was her professional life a battle, her personal life was marked by challenges too. She had 2 handicapped children, one that was severely mentally challenged. And years ago, she bought a home in Martha's Vineyard in order to escape New York City. It burned to the ground 2 days before she was supposed to move in. Personal rejection, harsh personal setbacks often provide fertile soil for the seeds of bitterness to grow. But in her case, anger found no place. Her friends called her Bubbles, not bitter. Who is this? Some of you, yeah, she knows. Beverly Sills. She was internationally acclaimed as an opera singer. She's a former director of the New York City Opera. On and on the list could go. When Mike Wallace interviewed her, he said this: "She is one of the most impressive, if not the most impressive individual I've ever interviewed." How can someone handle all of that rejection on a professional level, all of that hardship and trauma on a personal level, and yet be known as Bubbles? Here's what she had to say: "I choose to be cheerful. Years ago, I knew I had little or no choice about success, circumstances, or happiness. But I knew I could choose to be cheerful." Made all the difference in her life. Life does terrible things to people. In fact, life does terrible things to almost everyone at one time or another. Somewhere along our journey, we have to learn how to deal with these harsh realities of life. We have to handle the rough spots. We have to decide what to do when life sends us a detour or disrupts our plans, or destroys our unrealized dreams. Life is sometimes very unpredictable. The Bible understands that. Paul understands that. As he was writing to the Corinthians, he reminded his readers that their vision was limited. He put it this way: "Now we see as if looking through a glass darkly." We only have partial vision. The time will come when it all will be clear and we'll know fully as God already knows us fully. But that time is not yet. We have to live without seeing everything that was, is, or will be. And it's often difficult because we want to know what's going to happen tomorrow and the day after that, and on and on and on. We make our plans. We set goals. But who knows what may happen to change those plans, or what will come along and divert us from those goals. The question is, how do we live with the setbacks that we face in life? I think our passage suggests several things for us. First, we have to acknowledge the hurt, the harshness, and helplessness that we often confront in life. What does it mean to acknowledge this harshness? Well, I start by what it does not mean. It does not mean that we live every moment of every day on the doorstep of despair and bitterness. I suspect we all know someone like that. It does not mean we go on with an unending sense of doom hanging over our heads. Let me try to illustrate with another story. This one is about Victor Hugo. Victor Hugo opposed Napoleon III as emperor. Because of his opposition, he was exiled from France for 18 years. During his exile from 1852 to 1870, he lived on the Channel Islands. It broke his heart to not be able to set foot in his beloved France. Every evening of those 18 years, he would, at sunset, climb a cliff overlooking the harbor and gaze out at the water. Then, after many moments of gazing at the water, he would pick up a small stone and throw it into the water. Now, there were some kids who were watching him day after day after day doing this. And finally, one of those young men in that group got enough courage to ask him, "Mister, why do you throw stones in the water every night?" He smiled at the young man and said, "Not stones, my son, not stones. I'm throwing self-pity into the sea." He understood that God gave him the grace to be honest about his heartbreaks. He wisely understood he needed to face life's harshness with honesty and not despair. Or again, Elie Wiesel, who lived from September 30th, 1928 to July 2nd, 2016. He was a writer whose books have helped me and many thousands of others find the presence of God in the midst of very difficult circumstances. If you don't know, Elie Wiesel was a Jew who was imprisoned in a death camp. He wrestled with God, trying to get an answer to why God allowed the Holocaust to happen. He is credited with coining the name Holocaust for those events. He once shared this: "I still do not understand why God allowed the Holocaust to happen. I have not resolved the question, but I have never lost faith in God. I've had moments of anger and protest, but as a Jew who comes from such a profoundly religious family, and because of my passion for study, I never left God, although he may have left me. Nor can I understand the silence of the eclipse of God in years when we needed him most, but that does not push me farther away from him. I would say that sometimes I've been closer to him for that reason," unquote. He was speaking of the Hitler years, when millions of Jews and other people died in concentration camps. Remember what Paul has said? We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, struck down, but not destroyed. We have to acknowledge that bad things happen to good people. Sometimes good things happen to bad people. We have to acknowledge that. Then we have to keep a balanced perspective and see what we can see and what we can salvage. I'll share another story with you about Ray Charles this time. Ray Charles went blind during his childhood. His blindness might have caused him to live a life of defeat and self-pity. However, his mother always told him, "You might have lost your eyes, but not your mind." Ray Charles had the right mother, I'd say. He was encouraged to be what he could be and not to be a victim of life's unfairness. He, in the end, was a victor. This is what God can do in the life of one who places her or himself into the hands of Jesus Christ. Our faith enables us to walk through the valleys of dark experiences, not to camp out there for the rest of our lives in despair. I knew a woman who said so many Christians count their blessings on their fingertips, but keep their burdens on their pocket calculators. Many Christians fail to remember that Satan has already been judged and defeated. When Jesus Christ died on the cross, our debt of sin was paid in full. Satan lost. We don't fight the good fight to achieve the victory, but we fight from the victory that Jesus has achieved for us. If God at times confronts and challenges us, let's not forget he also comforts us as a mother stills her child. Third thing, be a part of the solution. Do what you can humanly do. Some people discover and feel the harshness of life and hide themselves behind a mask of self-pity, doubt, and heartache. If you waited to get married until you understood all the mystery of marriage and everything that makes up that sacred relationship, you would most likely never get married. People who do get married are usually those who set a date and take a risk. However, I thank God for people who do not suffer from the "we can't do anything" syndrome. Our world is better because of them. Christianity is not a spectator religion. Its founder has nail prints in his hands. He believed he could make a difference. Jesus never said, "That's it, I quit. I resign my messiahship." No, not even on the cross. So do not give up, even when it's hard. Even if you don't see making any progress, by determination and your witness to Christ, you may be just shy of turning a corner. The resurrection of Christ tells us that no matter how dark it is, we never need to give up. Christ is always with us. God is for us. Who can be against us? Finally, believe strongly in the sovereignty and benevolence of God in all circumstances. Never ever forget, as the hymn says, this is our Father's world. He is the ruler yet. Acknowledge the hurt, harshness, and helplessness. Keep a balanced perspective. See what can be seen and what can be salvaged. Be part of the solution. Do what you can humanly do. And finally, believe strongly in the sovereignty and benevolence of God in all circumstances. And we could do as George Matheson did when he learned he was going blind. He told his fiancée he was losing his sight. She refused to marry a blind man. He didn't give up, even under those circumstances. He had a broken heart. Instead, he accepted God's grace. He kept on keeping on. He wrote this: "O love that will not let me go, I rest my weary soul in thee. I give thee back the life I owe, that in thine ocean depths its flow may richer, fuller be. Amen." May the peace of